when you were looking up the companies that you just listed with Microsoft and Apple, what did you under what category? Biggest tech companies, biggest like what was
These
that
are the
category?
biggest companies, period, in the world. And
Biggest
then,
companies,
yeah,
period, in the world.
yeah.
What what led to Microsoft? What do you think if Microsoft is now number one? What got them there worldwide? What do you think?
Well, actually, Microsoft and Apple have had a intense rivalry. They're pretty much their entire known history, including their founders, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, because they came up around the same time, and the companies were founded around the same time, and they both were super popular, but they had very competing systems. One being Windows, and the other being like iOS, or it was called. I don't remember if it was always called. It was obviously not always called iOS. I'm drawing a blank on it, but the point is, it's two different operating systems
Yeah.
altogether. So it would, and you guys remember the commercials where, um, there would be the young kind of young adult who would pick the cool Apple product versus the lame old person Microsoft product, and so there's big cultural split between the two of them, but they were both huge companies. The founders had very well known and strong personalities as well that were very different. And so they've had this rivalry where they go up and down, and Microsoft took a huge lead at one point, and Steve Jobs was out for a while, and then Microsoft came back. I mean, Apple came back, and especially after '08, I think it was '08, where the iPhone sales just took over. Like they completely destroyed BlackBerry at that time, and that was and the rest was history. Microsoft, though, to answer your question, why are they number one over Apple, who has so many amazing devices? Well, Microsoft also has devices, number one, which is not the biggest part of their business. They have Microsoft Office, which is huge. It's on pretty much every system that runs anything uses
Hmm.
Microsoft Excel or Docs or something along those lines. Now there's Teams, there's hosting. I think they make a ton of money from hosting, similar to the Amazon AWS. Microsoft has that. So they built this massive web of services Microsoft has on top of their devices, on top of their operating systems, that at this point, and they've been sued to be by the Department of Justice for being a monopoly as well, and in using unfair business practices. There's even like there's old footage of Bill Gates walking in a courthouse and getting pies thrown at his face, which was funny back in the early 2000s when he was fighting with the DOJ. So it's kind of been a back and forth with these two. It's just Apple had the lead for a while, and then I think only in the last year or two, maybe Microsoft has come back again.
I was thinking of it. I did not thank you for that because I didn't consider the software aspect of Microsoft. Because even on my Mac over here, I have Microsoft Office so that I could mess with it from time to time. Even though I'm mostly in Google Docs and Google Excel, when I'm downloading stuff or whatever it is or saving stuff, it's saved in the Microsoft Office world. And I guess my brain was like this, where I believe if you're messing with Apple, you probably have a higher median income, right? Or if you walk into an office that has all Macs as the desktop preference, preferred using uh, computer or whatever, that's probably a tech startup, probably a company that's making doing well. And I was thinking in my head, like, and those things are not cheap, right? Apple hardware by itself is not cheap. So I'm like, yo, I thought that their stuff is so expensive that although worldwide, a regular like Microsoft doesn't have hardware really, do they? Do they have computers or anything like? Do they? They don't. Is there a Microsoft? There is a Microsoft like.
I don't think
Com-
it's a big part of their business.
so they
There
crush it
is
on
some,
software.
yeah, it's mostly software. It's software, server products, cloud services, and then they have a little bit in gaming, like Xbox and stuff like that. They own LinkedIn. They do have Bing.com, which does bring in some search advertising revenue, and that's what, like, in terms of a competitor, Google would be, most of their revenue would be coming from search, Google.com.
Interesting. I just didn't think it from. I thought that Apple would be running the world or beating them from just a hardware perspective, but Microsoft
From
has it.
hardware,
Yeah.
definitely. I think hardware, yes. Hardware, Apple is by far the leader. Server and cloud services, Microsoft, I think, is the leader, and Amazon is second, a very close second. And then Microsoft differentiates itself with Office products, like you're mentioning. You still use them. Windows, they have, and then gaming, LinkedIn, search, etc. A few devices, but not big as far as what I can see here. So yeah, like every of these big companies has what it's best at. Like Facebook is best with just straight up advertising, and same with Google, actually. Amazon, it gets most of its revenue from Amazon.com, but most of its profit from Amazon AWS.
So then back to the lecture at hand here with Apple being sued. What are your thoughts on this lawsuit?
I'm a little bit, I would say, jaded in a certain way, and when it comes to the government being involved in business, because there is certainly a role for government to reduce the risk of monopolies. I don't think anybody truly wants monopolies to exist, because that way there's no price discovery, and there's slower innovation, put it that way. A lot slower. And so it's not good, but anytime the government has to be involved with something, it's a slippery slope. And I think that the government plays a part, plays a big significant role in actually creating the monopolies themselves in the first place, and then they try to fix the problem that they created themselves through, friendly regulations that they'll offer to big companies, tax breaks, and then, of course, allegedly, hush hush deals and things under the table, handshake deals like that, that um, are bad for true free market competition. So, in this case, yes, I think it is important to make sure that all the big dogs need to keep each other accountable. And yeah, in many cases, they work together. But fortunately, we have several big dogs. You can make the case that Apple is more powerful than the Department of Justice, although that's like pretty comparable. But at least we also have Google, and we also have Amazon, we also have Facebook. So at least there's several big dogs who all want that top spot, and they're all like, you never know if it was Microsoft. Hey, how come you're not suing Apple? Hey, Department of Justice, go sue Apple. Like, you never know what's
You
happening
never
exactly
know.
behind the scenes.
Then playing the devil's advocate here, because the devil's advocate for me, because I I'm kind of like, hey, Apple kind of gets a little kick, which I think is good for them in a humility standpoint. But I'd be saying something different if I own that company. So let's think of an owner of Apple or a CEO of Apple, somebody who has significant stake in the company. Is it so wrong to be like, look, this is my platform, my software, my hardware, and you want to come put your shit, my competitor, you want to come put your shit on my software or my hardware? Is it wrong then to make it more difficult for my competitor to thrive on my hardware and software?
Well, from a shareholder's perspective, that's what you would want to see, for sure. That's what you want to see. But the interests of the shareholders may be different from the interests of the population at large. And so everyone's going to have their own incentives, and they have to go about doing something um, based on who they're serving. So Apple may know that they're breaking the law, and this happens all the time. By the way, with banks, look at banks, look at pharmaceutical companies. They knowingly, and this is not a conspiracy theory because you can read the what the fines are about. But these companies knowingly break the law because they know the fine will be significantly less than the net gain for the shareholders. So, from a perspective of the shareholders, putting ethics aside, I suppose, just from a revenue and profit perspective, yes, try to eliminate or roll up or whatever any competition. From the perspective of the citizens, in this case, the citizens of the United States, represented by the Department of Justice, which is you can um, make your claims that that's not really the case, but anyway, in theory, that's the case. So, as the citizens, you don't want Apple doing that because you do want other competitors entering the market to continue the free market process of lowering prices, improving services, and so on and so forth.
When you said that about Apple or whoever, whatever, pick your company, doing some stuff that they know that might be shady or they might get their hands slapped for, but the money they make from it will be significantly greater than the fine they will get for it. That makes me think that's a cousin to the way like gangsters think. Let's talk about mobsters in particular. There was a former mob boss. I forget his name. I was reading his stories. He does a lot of YouTubes nowadays. He was a boss. He was a hitman. He was a big earner, and that was his thing. Was they had this thing where they were scamming. They were cutting money off the top of gas. They had all these different gas stations. Basically, they were getting money from the gas and not paying the government. They were just big money, made big money off it. And he basically said, "Yo, we knew we would get caught. It was cat and mouse. We were running and running and running and running, but the money we made from that was worth a few years in jail, worth the hand slap. Like, they were able to hide that stuff. So it's just funny how the parallels of big corporation versus organized crime.
Yeah, well, I think that there's parallels because the issue is deeper and it's in all of us as individuals. I mean, forget about organized crime. Look at petty crime, even, or any type of crime that's just one off or one individual doing. It's still a question of risk and reward. Everything is risk and reward. You
Yeah,
look at countries with laws that are like Singapore. If you do drugs or you steal, there's a very significant penalty for doing that. And many may argue that it's excessive, but the fact of the matter is people aren't willing to do those crimes because the risk is not worth the reward. In other countries, it is worth it. It is worth it. And that's why you see certain crimes. It's all based on incentives. And yeah, I mean, there's one story that particularly bothered me about Wells Fargo, the bank, where I can't even believe people are still using them. And they're actually, now I'm still have this list of biggest companies in the world. And I bet you if I scroll down here, or let me do a little quick control F if I can find Wells Fargo. But here's Bank of America. Let's see if Wells, yeah, so number 56 in the world, biggest company in the world. I'm not even talking about the United States, at $200 billion market cap. And this bank knowingly created accounts for its own customers, extra accounts that would then hurt the customers' credit scores. There'd be fees, monthly fees. They'd like throw other accounts in because the account, everyone from the pretty much not quite the teller, but the account managers to the bank managers to the regional managers to the directors, VPs, and so on. Everyone was incentivized for more and more accounts, and even the big brass was aware of these illegal practices, and they'd allow it. They'd allow it because the fine ended up being, and I don't remember exactly now, but let's just say it was like a couple $1 billion. Like, okay, but that was worth doubling their market cap from, let's say, 100 to 200 billion dollars.